G'day everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of the Risky Rollers podcast. I'm Dalton, and I'm joined by Locky.
Hello everybody.
And also by Tim from Dice Arcade.
Hi guys, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, pleasure to have you on. So, with Tim here, of course, we're going to talk about Dice Arcade and what's involved with running a store and why you decided to do that, as well as talk a little bit about Painter's Block and how that can come up, and especially as that's relevant to a commission painter. So, as we've mentioned in many a time, Dice Arcade's our official sponsor of Risky Rollers, and you can use the code Risky Rollers to grab a discount on their online store, and you'll definitely be hearing a bit more about them throughout the rest of the podcast.
It's going to be a running theme in this one.
Yeah. We've also, of course, got our Patreon and our Discord set up, so check those out to hang out with us and chat. And if you wanted to help out the channel at all, it's always much appreciated.
Yeah, big thanks to all the already applied, subscribed people and Patreon members. We let us know for those of you that are, if you want your names shouted out in the podcast, because 100% we would do that.
Yep.
But yeah, it's already getting some traction, and you amazing people out there already supporting us. So it's especially
it's really
in the
incredible and humbling to think people are actually wanting to see more of what we're doing and putting some money behind it.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in this time of COVID, which is, here in Australia, it's pretty heavy with the lockdowns and stuff. So every single bit of support that you guys are giving us is so greatly appreciated, and it's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, you can check out our Instagram to see the sort of things we're actually working on behind the scenes, and that'll be featuring coming up soon on the channel.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, what has everyone been up to hobby-wise?
Tim, start with you.
Yeah, I'll kick off the game. I've just finished a Knight Castellan, a big green machine. It's been sitting in my garage for something like 12 months,
Yep.
and that's always the game. Being a commission painter is actually eventually getting to paint something of your own. But I may or may not have managed to squeeze that one in between doing some Chaos Knights for Risky Rollers. Sorry if I'm spoiling something that's coming up in a future episode.
Nah, you're not spoiling anything. Everyone knows about that.
Not at all.
We've said it many a times.
Yeah, so it was kind of the thing where I was like, oh well, the skeletons on both of these kind of look the same, so I was just kind of threw it in there in the batch painting, and may have got a little bit more distracted on that. Otherwise, in terms of paid work, I'm working on this little 6-man Space Marine squad for Kill Team for a local guy up here in Sydney. It's in the Retributor Space Marine chapters theme that you may or may not be familiar from the Astartes YouTube short film now on Warhammer TV. And I got some beautiful custom decals which are all in gold leaf. So if you're on my Instagram, the Big Bad Brush. Sorry for the unsolicited plug there, but in the coming weeks you might be able to see some photos of that one up. So yeah, pretty excited about that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. as in Astartes, right? They're the Retributors.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
And they got even these beautiful custom decals. They're like gold leaf decals, and
Oh, nice.
Because I'm pretty sure he made them, because I was a patron for him when I think it was like before the 5th episode came out, and I found it. I was like, oh my god, I got to watch like all of it, and then I was a Patreon for him, and then I'm pretty sure he sold like the decals and the prints for the shoulder pads and stuff to people like who wanted them. Through his Patreon and that, which was really cool. Like, and he used to post all the like the work in progress stuff of how he did all the mocap in like his backyard and stuff on his Patreon page. It was so, and in like full time lapse on like him in his backyard doing bits, and then how it would transition to in game in engine, and then all that. It was, dude,
that's really cool.
It's so cool, dude.
Yeah, really is amazing. I was just talking about it with a customer today. I think of all the Warhammer Space Marine animations out there, it really captures both the weight of the Mark IV armor that they're wearing, but also the speed at which a Space Marine should move. Which I think
100%. And we're gonna talk about it now because I'm sorry, Dalton, but we've mentioned it.
Well, actually, but before we jump into that, I'll throw out that, because we never bring it up, but Death of Hope got the speed but not the weight.
Yes, definitely.
Death of Hope? What's Death of Hope?
Yeah, the Horus Heresy animation.
Is that the Russian guy?
I think so. Yeah, that's him.
I don't think I've watched that one.
It's some fantastic imagery.
Yeah, right.
There's some really horrifying stuff in it, but it's all. Yeah, it gets the speed really well, but for whatever reason, the weight's not there. Anyway, sorry, go on, Locky.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
So it was it's the presence, right, and the best the selling, the absolute amazing thing for me regarding the whole imagery and size and everything with Space Marine is in the first episode, the shot when they're walking through the corridor and the soldiers are next to them and they have to like hug the wall.
Yeah.
And
that one guardsman. Yeah.
But it reminds me of first Horus Heresy book when Loken is like walking through the corridor and there's a really similar scene described in that way, and it's like the whole sense of how big they are, and it's described so well in the book. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh my god, I'm like, what? This is amazing. And
they nailed it. Yeah.
And then on the flip side, Angels of Death, like, none of that.
Yeah.
Like, one of the biggest thing in the first ep, when they get in the drop pod and for those of you who haven't seen it, it's not really a spoiler, it's just a part of a thing. But the drop pod, like the locking mechanisms, they're not what's it called? They're not arcade. So basically in animation, like you can set a point that another point interacts with, and then you can. It's kind of like faking physics in a way, essentially, right? But in all the Astartes stuff, you feel that like real life physics and the kinematics is real. Like when one point locks to another,
they all interact with each other.
And this one, it's just like they come down and it just stops. There's no like weight of it
there's
falling
no
down, and there's no bounce exactly. And I'm just like. And this, as you say, the speed and the cut of shots.
That's the thing. The Space Marine, impact's a really good word for it. Weirdly, like I raved about lasers a couple of episodes ago, and I will do so again. But the lasers and the multi-laser felt like they had more impact than the bolt guns.
Yeah,
when they were being fired and seeing them on screen.
Yeah,
and
it felt very visceral, like you were, you're very immersive.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
as you mentioned, Tim, you got like both the speed and the weight, and they weren't fast and they weren't particularly weighty. They were just kind of there.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is, just quickly, the last little bit on it before we move on, because we shouldn't really delve too much into this. But is like the bolt guns, right? Bolt guns are not. They're like semi-auto weapons. Even heavy bolters aren't full auto weapons.
No, they can be in fluff. They've often been switched between them. They can switch between semi-automatic and automatic.
But I mean, in terms of if you're a Space Marine, you're a built living weapon. You're not walking around like a soldier, like in current day, going dun, 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 whatever. It's everything is a calculated shot, right?
Yeah.
And that is one thing that Astartes has done a million times better than Angels of Death, and it's also the way he has edited that deliberately, like the shot where it's like bang bang bang, and then it's just quickly cut to like heads blown off dude's stomach, like the fact
body's
that like
hitting the floor,
a soldier just turns to a mist,
the same shot.
It's just like and they've tried, and it's just not the same. So anyway, that's rant over.
but that's really cool. It's a really cool project you're working on then. So it's like what I kill team.
So, stay tuned to my Instagram. In the coming weeks, you'll see photos of all this stuff I'm working on.
Yeah, well, we'll have that link down in the description of wherever you're listening to this as well.
Yes,
so
sure.
Keep an eye on that.
Cool. Dalton, what have you been working on?
I have. Well, you remember those Ravagers that I mentioned last episode? Mm-hmm. They're still not done.
Okay.
but I've gotten them very close, and I've been working on a whole bunch of Drakari stuff. The next couple of days, and you'll see this on Instagram before this episode comes out. But the next couple of days should see almost the entire army finished. The only thing I've got left now is like a Master Archon conversion, and another box of Scourges to kit out with a bunch of Dark Lancers.
What do you think you're doing with your Archon?
I've got the Age of Sigmar, or the old Warhammer Fantasy. I've forgotten the name of it now. Hold on, I've got it just over here.
Is it a dark angel? What do you call it? Dark elves model?
It's the Fleet Master from the Blackhawk Corsairs.
Okay. Because I think I've been a Dark Eldar player for a long time, And I think the gripe of all Dark Eldar players is that there's no good modern kits for that Archon.
Yeah, I mean, like there's the recent redesign with like the crossed arms on the front, but it's a very distinct
everyone
pose.
loves to hate it.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So I've got the Blackhawk Fleetmaster because I've all my Trueborn are done up from the Blackhawk Corsairs, and that's the theme I'm running through them is that all of the special units have been converted out of an Age of Sigmar Dark Elf unit.
Well, because you did the Blood Brides is...
The Blood Brides are from the Witch Elves.
Yeah.
The Trueborn are from the Blackhawk Corsairs. And then when I get around to Covens, the racks are going to be Namati Thralls.
Wow, this sounds amazing.
It's really cool. Like the witches, with the big flowy hair from the whatever the OS model is. I don't know.
They're super dynamic.
It just looks so much better and so much more different than the generic kit, and you're like, that's cool.
I like having both of them too because I go these are regular witches, and then these are the Blood Brides. They're all the Hecatrixes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, hell yeah.
It just it really brings that elevation and difference in stat line onto the table.
Yeah, I love a theme army. Yes.
Yeah, but that's pretty much what I've been working on. How about you, Locky?
I finally finished my NIDS. Wow. I didn't finish all the NIDS that I have. I've finished my workable would have been 2K tournament list now officially done.
Sweet.
So that was pretty satisfying to actually finally have completed.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then just another sister that was half painted or whatever, but now it's back to the old sorry, excuse me, the backlog of channel stuff, which is Grey Knights, before I can dig back into my sisters. But I'm also drawn back to the NIDS because with this new tournament that we're going to, it's 3,000 points. I'm like, what's the best way to fill out 3,000 points? Well, buy Harridan. Like,
Nice.
But none of them are in stock, so I was like, damn it. So yeah, just sisters and Grey Knights. It's going to be for a while.
Yep. Got to get that stuff ready for the channel, and
that's it. That's it. Work never ends. And then Infinity, really. Actually, Infinity is going to be like my next sort of main painting test, which is going to be my first attempt at non-metallic metal.
That's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm using all my factions are nomads, and they're all mech orientated and kind of like they're all in armor and stuff like that. So I think it's a good test for me to build on those painting skills and have my first sort of crack at non-metallic metal. I haven't decided on a scheme yet, but yeah. So
the Infinity models have a lot of curves and volumes that are going to be really lend themselves to that non-metallic style.
Yeah. It's well, if I don't butcher it.
Yeah, and being smaller and true scale as well, because the thing with non-metallic metal is that it's only bright from certain angles, and with a true scale model there are less angles and they're more proportional, and NMM works better on true scale than it does on something heroic like you'd see in 40k, definitely.
Yeah, right. Okay, I didn't even take that into account at all, really. So that's good to know. Cool.
Yeah. Tricks of the trade.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Have you done much of that, as in NMM?
Honestly, no. I mean, I have done some test pieces, but the thing with commission painting is that it's about getting the volume done and about completing an army. Unless someone's after like a particular character model, which is neither here nor there. I don't get many people approaching me for single model work. Generally it's high volume stuff.
Like full army sort of thing, right?
Yeah, non-metallic metal doesn't really lend itself to that kind of
it doesn't.
That kind of work.
Imagine doing a whole army like that.
I know. But that being said, true metallic metal, there's a whole conversation to be had about that, which I won't get into. But I've done a lot of true metallic metal, which you can see on the Risky Rollers Slaanesh Chaos Knights, in fact.
Ooh yeah.
Ooh yeah.
It's
almost like a chrome on those. It's fantastic.
It looks amazing.
Yeah.
It really does, and it's
it's much easier than it looks. It's all texture, believe it or not.
Really?
What?
Yeah, it's chrome texture. That's the secret. You heard it here first, guys.
That's hilarious.
That's incredible.
I'm just giving away more of my secrets.
Yeah. But I think it's like the same thing with any color work or non-metallic metal or true metal, as you say. It's the contrasts that make it work. So I think, with the knights that you've painted for us, for example, the reason why that true metallic metal parts look so great is because they're contrasted with the kind of fake,
the dull, rusty gunmetal.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got like the color. It's the same thing with when people say, "Oh, should you learn about color theory?" And look, any person who goes to pound go, "Yeah, you should at least watch a 20-minute video on it," because it's kind of important just to understand simple things like how contrast works, how certain colors should be in placement of certain areas, how lighting can affect certain colors. You don't have to spend 6 months on a deep dive on it, because you can, and sweet if you want to. But those basic things, I think, are where the simplest techniques, as you say, like this it's shining so much more because of the contrasting elements within a model.
It makes a huge difference having just a basic understanding of color theory, and even thinking about like volumes and that sort of thing, and how to use those in your painting. Makes a huge step from your basic sort of color by numbers approach to a more visually interesting scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Yeah. And other things like one thing I like to talk about is saturation as well. It's something I often talk to new painters about, which is basically just avoid highlighting with white and avoid using too much black, because you'll be surprised that edge highlighting with white will just kind of wash down and reduce the color that you have elsewhere in the model. And the same is true of having too black of a black. Like you can, instead of having a true white on the edge highlight, you could have like a soft yellow, and rather than having a true black, you could have a charcoal or a deep blue. And those sort of very basic things can really take a simple model to the next level.
Well, it's also understanding the basics of like how colors sort of interact with each other too, right? Like, the whole concept of, gold isn't really a color; it's just a variation of yellow. Which when you say it, it sounds stupid, right? But when you actually look at it, it's like it's really kind of just somewhere between brown and like
it's
a really bright yellow
color.
But literally, instead of you can get that same effect by just getting closer towards the whiter side of yellow or the blacker side of yellow, rather than a completely new color, like you say, like adding a white or adding or whatever. So I don't know. It's hard. I'm probably explaining it like a moron, but
no, you're doing exactly right. And the thing is painting in scale, because if you look at the example I give is, consider a car. Like a car is painted all one color, and it's glossy and it's shiny, and you would never paint a miniature like that. And the reason being is because when an object is painted one color but it is as large as a car, just because of the natural variations in the environment, the angle of the sun, whether you're inside or outside, the weather on that day, whether it's overcast, whether the lighting is diffused, you get shadows and different color variations in that flat paint job. But then you could compare that with a toy car, which is all one color. Because it's much smaller, the environment impacts on it much less.
It becomes a very flat color.
That's right, and it looks quite boring. That's why toy cars look boring compared to the real thing. So when you're painting in scale, essentially what you're doing is you're creating all those environmental factors. You're forcing those environmental factors into the miniature by painting in shadow, by painting in a diffuse light, if you will, which tricks the eye into thinking that it's a large scale thing in a small scale world.
So here's a question, I guess, for you directly. GW has a very distinct
yes, it does.
Style. I guess you'd call it paint style.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And it is so not at all how things look. I'm not talking like full realism or anything like that, but do you like painting that kind of style?
Well, I can't say no. It's how I've cut my teeth. Learning to paint, and the beautiful thing about that style is that it's what everyone knows and is familiar with. I mean, if I said Rhinox hide, we all know what color that is, but really it's a burnt umber. So it's a very useful style, and it's very useful, and it goes along with that with a particular set of Citadel paints. But the beauty of the Games Workshop style is that it's sellable, it's marketable, because all you really need is a pot of water and a series of paints.
Right.
I
mean, you can bring someone
2 highlights.
You can bring someone into a store and sit them down with 5 paints and a Space Marine and go, here's how to paint.
Well, it's quite easy, right? Too. Like I feel like their model design is reflective of their paint style. And it's one thing that I actually take my hat off to GW in terms of their product design is actually quite intelligent from that point. And because as you say, it's a base, a wash, maybe a dry brush and a highlight, but it's very easy where they just go highlight these distinct high points physically on the model.
Yeah.
Especially when like a Space Marine, like it's just so
Primera
easy.
Space Marines were designed to be easily paintable. They've got all those edges and corners that are easily reachable by a brush.
And it's super effective. And the reality is that most people can come in and paint anything in the starter set, be it a Necron or a Primera Space Marine, and walk away feeling pretty good about themselves, like feeling satisfied. And in terms of getting people into the hobby and learning how to paint, that's exactly what you want.
And I mean, like we talk about it fairly often as it's like a basic thing, but that's still good. Like people coming in and painting.
Oh, it's great.
At any level is fantastic.
Right?
And
I mean, because it's just a stepping stone towards branching out into different paints, into like buying busts, into looking at 3D full scale, like 75 mil or 100 mil figures and like that. Because that's kind of the reason why I bring it up, because that's where I'm at my painting right now. Sort of, obviously, I still enjoy painting G-Dub models and fitting because of Games Workshop and 40k and everything, but like regarding hobby, I'm at that point now where I kind of want to start buying busts and start really going back and painting skins a lot more, because I used to do a lot of oil paints and stuff when I was younger and like really kind of enjoyed painting body and figure and all those kinds of things. And it's like they're actually, when you start digging, now we have the internet, there's actually a lot of crazy stuff, real like, because I'm vampire obsessed as well, so it's like crazy dark vampirous crazy woman thing, like that's so my like that's my alley. Strong vampire chicks is just like, oh man, love it. But at the same time, it's like it's a challenge, right? It becomes like a test of jumping that, moving to the next step, or kind of expanding on those skills, or going, okay, cool, I've got this base understanding of kind of G-Dub or whatever, or it doesn't necessarily G-Dub, anybody, because they're quite different, right? Like you look at some of the real pro guys that were doing things like non-metallic metal and like crazy wet blending and like nuts busts and really great
like
organics
photorealistic faces and all that kind of
stuff.
stuff.
Man, and it's full on. Like when you see, the weirdest thing I think for me that like I lost my brain about one time was when I was looking at the painting of a face with hair, but they painted the shadows of the hair on the actual face.
Yeah, wow.
And I was like,
this is on a miniature.
It's I think it's Sergio or it was either Sergio or Angelo. Oh, one of those two. They're like really, really nice. I'll try and remember it and put them in the show notes in the description. But they're ridiculous. Like they're next level. Like quality painters. And that for me, I was like, that's painted in. Like that was. That's blocked out and actually put there, and then still blended with everything else, and I'm like, that's just
that's a top tier example of what I was talking about before, about forcing the miniature into that scale environment to trick the eye into thinking that it's in that level.
And it's that's just, and G-Dub doesn't really market that at all. I mean, do you get stuff to that sort of level that's not kind of Games Workshop related, or that's more kind of hero show PC, kind of even just from a sculpture point of
in
view
terms
kind
of people
stuff?
ask me to paint in that style?
Like have you had commissions like that and stuff?
Not per se, no. It's very rare that I get single model stuff. It's mostly whole armies, because a lot of my clientele are people that want to play, or they want a fully fledged army that they can put on the table, but they want it to look top tier. They want it to they want it to look good in the cabinet, but then also take it to a tournament and have it be playable. But that being said, just getting back to what you were saying before about the G-dub style, like in terms of commission painting, a lot of what I do is kind of bastardized in the sense that it's not the G-dub style, but it's not quite all there in terms of oil painting. Because a lot of the time with commission painting, you're just trying to you're kind of walking between two worlds, between that sort of world of oils and varnishes and that sort of top tier stuff, and then the basic Games Workshop Citadel paint typeset that everyone's familiar with.
Because people expect it to look a certain way.
That's right.
They come to you and they'll say, I want a Space Marine army, and they know how a Space Marine should look because they've seen all this box art and stuff online.
That's exactly right.
And so they expect a certain...
Yeah, but then when you come to do it, it's often the discussion is with the client. What I do as a commission painter is not what you do at home, but for money. So a lot of the time I try and get 90%. Like Space Marines is a great example because I can probably get 90% of a Space Marine done, just with airbrush. Throwing in some shadows, and then I'll do a couple of varnishes and an oil pin wash to get that GW look, but without putting the investment of time in. So kind of using the fundamentals from both camps, but really commission painting is all about speed, all about finding ways to cut corners but still have it look like the box art.
Well, that's all work, right? Isn't that really
that's right.
It's I mean, as soon as you bring money into it, everything's about efficiency and
yeah, that's right.
Does it kill your creativity a bit? Or at all? I'm not. So don't. Sorry.
Yes and no.
Yeah.
I mean,
don't take it like I'm insinuating that you don't have creativity or anything like that. I'm just sort of I'm curious as to does it actually hinder your creativity?
It does a bit of both because like with the Astartes project I was talking about, like I would never think to paint Space Marines grey. I would never do that. I never thought to do that, but I'm really, even though it's a little 5-man, 6-man project, I'm really feeling it, and I was able to throw in some deep shadows that I'd never really done before, and just do a lot of decal work, which all hobbyists struggle with, that I never really considered, and so I find in that way it kind of pushes me in new directions. And if you're on my Instagram, you've probably seen I've done a lot of Imperial Fists lately.
Yeah.
I've done in the last 12 months I've done 3 Imperial Fist armies.
What? Why? Who wants to play the worst Space Marine army?
It's the fluff, I think.
I mean,
what
it's
fluff?
better than,
the lamest.
It's better than having to paint 3 Ultramarines armies.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know. think it's the colour because people love yellow, but they don't like painting.
They hate painting.
So is yellow that bad? Because I've painted white, man, and I reckon my white comes up pretty good. So like everyone's like, "Oh, white's real bad," and then everyone's like, "Oh, yellow's real bad." I'm like, is everyone just jumping on that bandwagon, or have they actually tried it and gone, it is trash?
It's hard off the brush.
Okay.
Because it's hard to get a full color.
Yeah.
And then when it is flat, it's flat. Like it's hard to push a shadow in there. So if you look at the fists on my Instagram, it's a lot of it's orange, and then the top color, the top note is like that new Citadel color called Phalanx yellow, and then the orange in there is something I made myself out of Liquitex inks. And so it's just got a lot going on, and it's just hard to make it look sort of polished and smooth. But yeah, so yeah, a lot of to get back to your original question, I find it does help my creativity because it pushes me in directions I would never usually take. But it also hinders me in the sense that it sometimes, takes away from time that I would be spent experimenting elsewhere. But yeah, yes and no.
Well, that's good. I think that's good to hear. I guess better than just no, I hate painting. Not you hate painting, but you know what I mean. Like that it becomes
I'm in the rut.
yeah. Well, great segue. Have you been in? Okay, so some context is the last 5 weeks I've just been in mass painter's block.
Yeah.
And I've had model after model sit and come across my desk, and I've tried to, sometimes you might get partially through something and then you put it down and then you feel a little bit of inspo for something and then you're like, oh no, I'm going to do this conversion just to kind of break it up and kind of go that I need a change.
Yeah. Palette cleanser.
Yeah. I mean, And then I've done that, and then still just like this wall. I've broken through it now finally, and I realized what the issue was. But has that happened to you? And when it has, what have your solutions been for that kind of situation?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I should answer it up front, and no, not really, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I think I'm one of those freaks of nature that has never really had this issue, hobby block.
Just a higher quality of hobbyists than the rest of us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just a member of the painting master race here.
Yeah. Hey man, own it, bro. If you've got that skill, like, hey, I'm not gonna feel bad about it, man. You should rock it for as long as you can.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I think it's just from I'm just very goal orientated. I've always had a long attention span. Before I was in the hobby full time, I was an English teacher, so I used to reading a lot of books, and so I've just always had a sort of slower mind, and just enjoyed life at a slower pace. And so I think that's why painting just speaks to me, or I seem to be able to bang it out, because I mean, and I'm quite perplexed by it myself sometimes when I look back and look what I've done, because I mean, even with starting the shop, I've still managed. I'm on my 4th army for the year this year, and it's September, so I'll probably get another one done.
Wow,
before the end of the year.
That's incredible.
That's nuts, man. And then still running a store as well. That's just like, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I've just seen your towel. Or not your towel, but the towel for someone.
Yeah, no, that one was mine. Early on in my commission days, and I know this is kind of off topic a bit, but for people looking at getting into commission painting, this is what I would recommend: is I would paint armies for myself.
Yeah. Paint
whole complete armies and then sell them on eBay. And then that kind of gets you an idea of, you know, where the market value is, and then you can say, okay, this is how much that army cost me, you know, versus my time input, that sort of thing.
But you can. I mean, that's a great point, because that was going to be literally my next question, or not question, but like, you know, thing to talk about. But because you can't really look at it like a one in, one out kind of situation, like you treat any other job, right? Because or can you? Like, I mean, is that because yeah, can you? Like, is that how you...
Yeah, I know what you mean. There's always an emotional investment in the painting. There are some times that it has been hard to give armies up. One I can think of is a set of when the Mega Gargants dropped for Age of Sigmar. I did one of each of them, and it took me about 40 hours for each individual Mega Gargant. And at the end of it, I had them up for sale, and they never sold in the end. And to be honest, I was quite happy they never went, because I was quite emotionally invested in those models. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
but if it's just a Space Marine, model, I don't care. Get out the door.
Yeah.
I've heard that a few times actually, that you've like just on other podcasts and other people just say that sometimes they get a little bit too attached to something, and then they kind of a little bit relieved that it doesn't kind of go the way that was originally intended.
Yeah, the trick is just not to paint too well, and I know that sounds silly, but just to keep focus on the end goal.
Right.
I find when I'm working on a single model like a Mega Gargant, I think the attachment comes from just working on that one piece rather than batch painting something.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. You're putting all your attention and all your but you're putting all your attention, all of your focus onto getting that one paint job perfect, putting all that effort into it, and then at the end of it going, well, now I've got to give it up.
Yeah, and it does something to your brain. Particularly, I can remember working on the Kraken Eater, and like painting each of the individual pieces that go around his belt, and like the piece on his back, and like the net that he's holding. And then, because I painted the body quite early on, did all the skin tones first, but then, you know, each time that it was like building this monument, you know, each time I would finish a piece and stick it on, I get this big dopamine rush, you know, by the time I completed it.
Completion would have been, it would have been crazy. I'm looking at it now, it's one.
Yeah, I could never give it up.
Yeah, and rightly so. Like, I think those things they're good. They're good things to have those iconic showpieces for yourself as well. You know, so be a bit of a reminder for yourself of what you're doing and why you're enjoying it, I guess.
Yeah, too right. But in terms of hobby block, I mean, there has been times when I've hit it, but my solution is always just to change the scale of what I'm doing. Like like Dalton was just saying with batch painting, like it is a nightmare, and I often find that dopamine rush is what pulls you through. So there are times when rather than batch painting the 10 guys I got in front of me, just break it down to 2 guys and just work through 2 at a time. Get that sense of completion. Have 2 or 3 models that you see all the way through. Finish the basing, put the black ring on them. Put them in the glass display. Even post a photo on Instagram just to get that positive feedback.
100%.
I find that kind of.
I mean, after doing,
I'll come back around and touch on that again in a moment. But how did you find that? Because you mentioned, Locky, that you've just come out of a big section of painter's block.
Yeah, well, I think literally on the point that you just said, Tim, like after doing about nearly 60 infantry models for the NIDS, and I was doing them in blocks of 12s or 15s or 16s.
Yeah.
I've scaled it back. We're going, I'm now only ever going to paint 5 models at a time, up to 5 models at a time maximum. And that's just something that I learned for myself. Like that is just, I'm not going to, because it just drags on and drags on and drags on and drags on. And then regular painting. So as in like something every day. Doesn't matter. And I always just say, even if it's half an hour or 45 minutes or an hour, just every day.
Even if you sit down and edge highlight half of one Space Marine.
Yeah, or even if it's like the metallic, the sword on one dude, whatever. At least it's that. And that helped me through a lot of time. But this time was quite big bad. And the problem was attributed to not playing. That was the loss of, I guess, motivation for me, because a lot of the armies that I'm painting aren't necessarily like, showpiece creative sort of endeavors. They're more of
they're for function.
They're for a purpose, whether it be just because I want to play them and I'm really interested, or it's for the channel or for whatever. That not now being in such a heavy lockdown for so long and not playing. It sucked, and then I just jumped on and had a bunch of TTS games, and it literally just rejuvenated it and it just fixed it for me. And that's really something that I can speak for if people are hitting that kind of play and paint. And if you're in Victoria or you're in Australia and in heavy lockdown, come on the Discord, play TTS with us, or play TTS with your friends, and it helps. Yes, it's weird, it's janky, it's annoying to use, but when you do it, it's good, man. It really is. It fills that void. It
scratches the itch.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the hit. It's the hit you need to, get you through to the next hit.
Well, I mean, I think I'll generalize that slightly further as well, because I've been actually thinking about it quite a lot today. Because I was in a similar place, and I quite like batch painting, because I tend to just, or even batch painting 2 or 3 different things at the same time. Like today I was working on Witches and Scourges and Ravagers, and they're all at different stages of batch painting, but I'm just doing a whole bunch of them all together.
Well,
you're crazy.
But I'll do... But see, the thing that I'll do this, and I'll smash out a whole bunch of stuff, and then there'll be like a weeks where I'm like, I'm just not motivated. I can't get up the motivation to do it.
So you like binge it?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you saw that when I was finishing the Necrons for the channel, it was like I'd paint like 3 or 4 units in a week.
Yeah.
And then just nothing for weeks.
Crazy.
And to sort of generalize it a bit, because the thing that I found with it is that it comes back to connecting with what gets you excited about the hobby. Because it's
exactly.
For Locky, you mentioned that it was playing the games that sort of got you back into it. And I know like the last time I sort of really got stuck into a bunch of painting was it was playing games. It was playing physical games and recording battle reports. It got me really psyched, and I was doing a bunch of stuff with that. But it's not always the same thing, because this time I was theory crafting a bunch of lists after looking at some of the recent Necron results, and for whatever reason, just doing that, something clicked. I'm like, I've got to paint.
Yeah,
I've got to be doing stuff.
That's good.
Ready the troops?
I mean, law for me has also been a huge driver.
Absolutely, yeah.
Huge driver. Like, the reason why I bought a whole bunch of Death Guard was because I listened to Lords of Silence. And that book is awesome. And then I just went on this, like with the what's it called? The Dagger one. I can't remember the name. Mortarian's Horus Heresy book, which is also amazing. And I was just like, and then, got a big chunk of it, and then migrated onto something else, and I find that associating lore orientation with the army that I'm painting at the time helps me a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
Ironically, I enjoy painting Tyranids the most, and it's the one that has literally zero lore for.
Yeah, poor
and,
guys.
like no books and no nothing.
They don't know how to write.
Yeah. Exactly. Are you really
Not the smartest creatures?
Yeah, they're not the best race if they can't put pen to paper, surely.
But yeah, like when it comes down to it, it's reconnecting with what makes you excited at that moment, because it's not always going to be the same thing. Yeah. So I tend to find that when I'm really hitting that demotivation, coming around and going, well, reading some lore or playing a game or listening to some podcasts on lists, or looking at someone else. Sometimes it is, if I can force myself to sit down and finish one model, as Tim was saying, get that something done, that can give you that little dopamine push to get back into it. So I mean, if you're struggling to get motivated to paint or build or whatever it is, there's a whole wealth of other hobby related bits and pieces around that you can look into that can often just bring you back onto it and set you back up ready to go.
And also
40k universe is large, it's huge. Well, I should say the Warhammer universe in general is huge.
That's the other thing I was going to say, is that on top of all those things that you said, Dalton, which are 100% accurate, is a palette cleanser, as you touched on earlier, Tim.
Yeah, for sure.
Something that's got nothing to do with what you're currently doing. Like some random AOS model that you're like, that looks really cool, I'd like to actually give that a crack. Or like, the things that I'm kind of delving in, like trying new skills, like using one test model to literally work on like your wet blending or work on non-metallic metal or whatever. Or, sometimes those real distractions or those breaks just, can help with getting over those humps.
Yeah, that's something I would throw in as well. Trying a new style of painting. And just getting back to a couple of the armies that we've talked about tonight on my Instagram, like the Imperial Fist, for example, and the Tau that you were looking at before. Go and have a look at them, guys, if you're listening, because none of them have edge highlights on them. And my current style, I don't do any edge highlighting at all.
Wait, really?
No.
I'm similar, man.
little.
I've you've got like really, really deep shade lines and
same with the Chaos Knights, but I mean they're a much larger model, so you can kind of get away with not edge highlighting on them. But again, getting back to what we're talking about with starting with the Games Workshop style, and if you get to the point where that's you've been painting a long time and that's all and you find yourself in a rut, well, it's probably because that style is intrinsically very time consuming. And so I would recommend anyone out there to start with a simple learning how to oil wash, which is very easy. All you need is just a gloss varnish and literally the cheapest black oil paint you can buy at the art shop, and then maybe a little bit of methylated spirit or white spirit that you can get at Bunnings, and it'll change your life, and it'll speed up your painting 100-fold. And I think particularly if you're starting something new, it'll just give you a completely new visual feel that is very, very satisfying, that you can do in a short amount of time. And I think that's a great way to get out of a rut. And then you have this moment of realization where it's like, well, I can really get 90% of an army done in the space of a couple of weeks. And then that can be really satisfying to try.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Well, on that note, I think we might, some fantastic hobby tips from Tim there. We might have a quick break and hear a bit about Dice Arcade and why you should check out the store, and then we'll be back to actually discuss what's actually involved in running a store and why Tim does it.
DiceArcade.com.au. All the biggest brands in miniatures and wargaming. Free postage over $250.
All right, welcome back, and thank you for that edited in, Tim. So to Tim, who's actually here, let's talk a bit about Dice Arcade. So that's your store up in Sydney.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we're in Miranda, which is in the Sutherland Shire, which is the sort of southern part of Sydney that's divided by a river and a couple of bridges. And wargaming's been pretty strong in this area for a long time. It's got one of the oldest games workshops in Australia. I think it's just the Games Workshop in Miranda is 25 years old, I think, this year.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so big history. There's also this big chapter called the Sutherland Shire Gamers, and you might be familiar with Moab, Mother of All Battles, which is like it's probably, I would say it'd be fair to say it's one of Sydney's largest gaming conventions, tabletop gaming conventions that they run every year, and that's in Sylvania, which is just a couple of suburbs over from where I'm based. So yeah, so Sutherland Shire is pretty big on gaming. Dice Arcade itself, we're only brand new. We've only been open since March this year.
Hell of
wow.
hell of a time to open a store.
No, I know. People, I get that question all the time. Because particularly where we're located, as I just said, where the store is, we are directly above
Oh yeah,
Games Workshop.
you've told me this. Yeah, I can't believe that.
That's
it's
incredible.
Yeah, is it stupid? Is it smart? I mean,
I think
what
it's
I've
so
done.
funny that like there's a G-Dub and then you're selling the same products but cheaper right above them. It's
Directly
like,
upstairs.
why would anyone ever go to a Netflix store? It's hilarious.
Well, I hope that's the conclusion my customers come to. But yeah, that being said, I mean, I'm not brand new to the area. I don't. It's not the case where I come in to change the market or whatever. Because I mean, I think I was kicking around the Games Workshop there for 6 or 7 years. I think I've known the last 3 managers that worked there, and they've all been in my Dungeons and Dragons groups for that for almost that entire period of time. So it's all one big community here, really.
That's good. I mean, that's really positive.
Yeah, we're all the same people, and the manager just changed hands, and just before COVID lockdown 2.0, and then lovely guy there. Shout out to Christo there at the Games Workshop Miranda. He's a lovely bloke. And we're all mates. We all call one another frequently. You just touched base on the other day, see how I was going. Yeah, so we all work closely alongside one another. And at the end of the day, I mean, both of us work for the Games Workshop. I mean,
I guess kind of. Yeah.
yeah.
When it comes back down,
We've got a huge range, and then so do they downstairs. And the beauty of the 2 stores is that inevitably one of us doesn't have something on the shelf, the other one does.
Yeah,
Which is great. So yeah, so we do work in tandem a little bit.
Well, I suppose when it comes down to it, it means when someone comes into your store or their store, there's already a bigger community and a bigger space provided in with one.
Yeah,
another.
exactly. And this is something I talked at length about with Games Workshop when I opened up and said, look, I want to be involved in retailing your stock. And I said, would you mind me opening up? How do you feel about me opening up so close? And like the way they describe it is that their stores are kind of designed to get people into the hobby, to be a soft landing for new gamers, because in terms of other hobbies and other retail products in general, it's a fairly steep learning curve.
Yeah.
It's a lot to walk in and be like, I'm going to learn this hobby from the ground up.
Do you mean wargaming in general, like wargames in general?
Yeah. And you really need someone to kind of usher you in and show you the ropes and throw the dice with you and teach you about the paints and the products. And
Locky and I have mentioned it before that, wargaming and the Warhammer hobby is several hobbies all at once, really. And so you're coming into that and going, well, I want to play this game and do miniatures and scale modeling and painting things and that scenic element of basing, that sort of thing, and then also doing all the online stuff and reading books and listening to stuff. There's
and playing and learning the rules.
Writing your own lore and
game.
So the Games Workshop design and the way that they set it up for new-coming players is, I think it's admirable in that the stores are set up in such a way, as you mentioned, that someone can walk in off the street and go, well, there's so much to get started with, and you've got someone there going, well, here's what you can do. You can do this. And I mentioned earlier, here's a Space Marine and 5 paints. There you go. And breaks it all down and makes the entry easier and makes the entry accessible for everyone.
Yeah. And that's how he explained it to me. They said they feel that that's what the stores are there for. That's how they provide it, and they don't feel that that online only, because that's the way that a lot of retailers are going these days, is the way to go with Games Workshop, because it's not enough just to buy these products. You need to be involved. You need to be face to face with other people in order to learn and be involved in these things. And
I think the hobby is all about, really, when you break it down, everything that we've just said, at the end of the day, primarily the hobby is really about community, right? Like
it's about the people.
That's what I mean. Like the people in the community that build that, right? Whether it be Tim yourself as a commission painter, or the store that you have, playing physical games, writing lore. Like, you can sit at home and you can paint the world's best models. If no one sees it, or no one enjoys it, if it's just you, like, great, that's just for you. But, like, is it really to the same? Like, you're not really helping anyone else, really, are you, with that?
Yeah. Is it that the market? Is that the hobby? Like, is that what drives sales and keeps the doors open at the stores?
But I mean, I think it's beyond that as well, though, right? I think now it's become this kind of moving thing in and of itself, where there's the business of GW, and then there's the community, which is driven by people like yourself and the store that you have, which is so. And it's why one of the reasons why I think a store like yours will always exist, even if the entire, if 90% of it is going online, as you say, or the trend of the natural progression of it is going, that there'll still always be a need for the brick and mortar store, because the hobby itself is so intrinsically linked to the people that are
it's such a
involved with
physical,
it, you know what I mean?
Relational hobby.
I think that's great, especially in this day and age with, like, the way tech is going.
Too right. And in practice, that's the way I've seen it played out, in the first half of this year, where, I mean, because I was so heavily involved in the community, I mean, you're not really going to open the store unless you're confident that you can have people walk into the door. And so it was kind of the case that a lot of the old guard, the established players that I'd been around with for years, they were looking for a more mature, more open, more dynamic space where they could try new things, where they could involve new game systems and game types. And that was kind of the sort of part of the business plan. And then Games Workshop, they're still fulfilling that role where they're bringing new people into the hobby. And in terms of geographically, they are physically the physical shop front. They are on the street level, whereas Dice Arcade itself is on the first floor. So we're up a flight of stairs, and so it's kind of the case where the people that find us are kind of more dedicated, loyal hobbyists that have been there for some time, that are after a more select product, or more specific. Like, they might branch out of the Citadel system. They might be after things in the Vallejo range. They might be painting with Winsor Newton brushes, so it's more select. And then, of course, we cater to all systems. Magic the Gathering is easily our second biggest seller. It's probably on par. We probably sell as much MTG product as we do 40k stuff. And so we kind of we involve a number of different communities as an extension of that. And then, of course, there's crossover between these hobbies. Yeah, because we're all nerds.
I mean, Magic is huge.
I mean, like, most of the stores down here, I think Magic is the primary seller, and then you've got Games Workshop and other stuff coming in fair way behind them.
I mean, I think also one of the best things about, just coming back to the weirdness of you being above a G-Dub store is, I've always been an advocate for diversity in terms of, especially in a creative environment, especially in business. From my own businesses and stuff, the more people you can involve from different backgrounds, from different walks of life, from different experiences in and of themselves, makes your product better.
It makes it a richer environment.
And if we're looking at, like, the product being the hobby, right? Not money, not Games Workshop, it's in, like, the vocation of the hobby, and then looking at Dice Arcade and Games Workshop stores being right there, the level of diversity that's interconnected right then and there, it's perfect. It's like having, like, a brother and a sister school, right, that come together and do, like, inter-school sports or whatever, however you want to justify it. It's like that breeds so much great creativity and great community is having those, those, because people might be like just straight up G'd up. No, I'm fanboying it. I'm them only. Then other people like no, and then you get this crossover that you wouldn't normally get, and that's the best.
Yeah, because as for example, like the size of because Dice Arcade's quite a large store. We're 110 square meters.
Oh wow, okay.
Whereas Games Workshop downstairs is something like 50 or smaller. They're probably about 40 square meters down there. So we've run. I mean, we're still brand new, like I said, but we've run 3 tournaments up there so far. We ran one ITC tournament with 18 people. Bit more configuration. We've got room to expand as well. Like we have a sort of like a second space. It's another 80 square meters that we're looking at filling.
Wow. So
once we get our events up and running.
So how does the ITC? Sorry, just cut you off. But how does the ITC thing? Like, how does I'm interested in your tournament stuff. How does?
Yeah,
how
ITC.
does that work?
What does ITC stand for? International Tournament
Circuit, I think.
ITC.
Circuit, yeah.
International Tournament Circuit. So it's run by this. What is it called? Best Coast Pairings. It's basically a way by which people who play 40k can go to ITC registered events and score points, which increases their ranking by region, by geographical region. And so you can kind of see how you stack up against other players in the area. And it also feeds into you attending other more selective events. So there are some larger tournaments and larger scenes that are invitational or that are for people over a certain number of points. And then based on the number of attendees that you have at these events, it will affect the number of points that are available for you to score. Don't quote me on this, but there's different rankings. Like you might have a grand tournament, like a GT, which is over a particular number of players. Let's say 50 players. I'm not sure if that's the number or not.
I think they've changed it recently with COVID stuff, but it's I think it ranges from 30 to or 35 or 40 to 40 and above. I think it is. But yeah. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, so there's a real desire in the local community to seek out these registered events, and that's something that Games Workshop as a storefront can't really support, because these ITC events have special lists. They'll involve Forge World models that some Games Workshop stores don't really allow in store because they don't retail those products.
So just quickly regarding what you said there, with the ITC is not affiliated with Games Workshop. So
no, it's not.
The ITC is an independent run organization out of California. I'm pretty sure it's like this SoCal or like San Fran. It's one of them. And they basically came together to try and unify the competitive scene globally, or more North America, and then it kind of just like one of the reasons why we have this terrain system and point system now is because of the ITC, really. Even in 9th edition. The 9th
edition terrain system takes a lot of cues from the ITC format terrain system they've been using for years.
Because they were doing that on their own throughout 8th edition to kind of create the system, because as you say, the Games Workshop just hasn't supported the competitive circuit for quite some time.
The same's true for 9th mission structure as well. A lot of the secondaries and that setup has come from the ITC format.
Competitive play in 40k, if you were to follow the rules as written by Games Workshop, is somewhat more narrative orientated. But ITC just kind of try and create an even playing field so that the skill of the player can really be revealed, and so to create a more competitive environment.
So sorry, I just wanted to jump in, just like for people who might not necessarily know what ITC is.
Yeah, that's right. Because I mean, to be perfectly honest, I don't know a lot about it myself. Like I'm probably from our earlier discussion, the listeners have probably picked up that I'm more of a hobbyist, more of a painter, and a products guy and more of a business guy than I am a competitive player. And fortunately, I've got connections in the community, and I've got a nice guy. His name's Eugene. He's my tournament organizer who kind of runs all that stuff for me.
All right. So you actually you don't sort of take the reins on that sort of stuff.
No. Okay. And I think that's exactly what you were saying before resonated with me about involving lots of different people and just having that humility to let other people, to step back and just kind of recognise that other people have those skills and expertise in that area. Because with running an ITC event, you really need someone that's personable as a tournament organizer, but you also need someone that knows the rules and that's able to handle those kinds of queries. And,
definitely.
Yeah, and I'd be kidding myself if I could fill that role. I just don't have the experience, or the competitive experience, or the list building knowledge. You really need to be encyclopedic with it.
Yeah. And for just a little bit of additional information for people that aren't necessarily aware of the community, the competitive scene, there's also the WTC, which is more what's focused in Australia, or has been up until I guess maybe the last tail end of 8th edition into 9th edition 40k, which is the World Tournament Circuit. I think
all these acronyms. What are they?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. And there is a difference, like standardized rule set between WTC and ITC. And there's a more, for example, I think the player standard in, say, Sweden and Germany is more WTC, like it is here, as opposed to North America and Canada, which is ITC. Then the differences are marginal, really.
It's like at the end of the day, it tends to just come down to slight aesthetic differences with how they structure certain rules and how they fix certain issues.
Yeah, and then the terrain is probably the biggest major one, like what they deem to be their standard. And again, those things have been kind of evolving weirdly because of COVID. Australia just not really having any tournaments run this year, obviously. And just everywhere. But was the tournament thing natural for you? Because you said that the area is quite big, right?
In terms of a point of difference, that's something that we're looking at offering. ITC events are always well attended for 40k, but also the Southern Shire is huge for Age of Sigmar. It's quite common that we have Age of Sigmar events that are up to 80 players.
What?
At Sylvania. Yes,
wow.
Huge. It's
huge.
Some of you might be familiar with the YouTube personality AOS Coach, who lives in the Southern Shire, who runs many of these events. He has quite a big following on YouTube, social media, and he's a big name in the AOS community, and he runs a lot of events out of Sylvania and shops at Dice Arcade, and so there's a huge following for AOS here as well. And so we haven't run any big AOS events yet, but in terms of the space we want to fill in the community, we want to be running those sort of large scale events. Well, and, just kind of providing that sort of those sort of regular tournament competitive play for for people that can't scratch that itch at the other local game stores.
I mean, it's a nice. I'm seeing it as it's a complementary role to having the Games Workshop there as well. They're storefront, and by and large they tend to be drawing in the passerby, little Johnny on his walk down the street, and then you're broadening that out, and they can get into the hobby and they've got access to all these tournaments and things as well.
So is it? I mean, I think it's amazing the literally like double-edged sword, but like maybe double-edged scabbard. I don't know it's maybe something positive, not negative. But as you said, Dalton, G-Dub reels them in, and then you like trap them.
And just give them an opportunity to take them to the next level.
Yeah, man. You trap their ass. I think it's great. Again, it's just like that level of diversity. That's like people that get bored with it, they can expand on it. But so for the future of that avenue, like is being a major TO / sponsor / do you want to see 120 player ITC grand majors like that with Dice Arcade's name all over it, like the Dice Arcade
potentially
grand major? Is that the goal?
I know we got the following in. I know there is capacity in the Sutherland Shire. There's enough wargamers in this area in order to facilitate something like that. But really, we're just kind of focused on the sort of small scale stuff so far. I mean, we're fortunate in the building where we are, where we have like the shop space itself is 110 square meters. We can comfortably sort of fit 20 players in there. But we got sort of like another space available to us across the way, which is another 80 square meters. In future, the vision is that will become a sort of dedicated tournament play space, and then the space that we're in now will just be for retail. So there is the possibility to run those sort of things, but we're really just looking at doing it on a local scale, before we get to that sort of bigger level, because there's people already fulfilling that role, like the Sutherland Shire Gamers, Moab, and those guys that I mentioned before, AOS Coach. Like, they're already running large-scale tournaments in our area. But what we don't have is regular ITC registered events. Like, these sort of large-scale events might happen once or twice a year.
Right.
Or not at all with COVID. So it's just kind of, so we're just filling that sort of classic LGS, local game store sort of tournament offering at the moment.
That's fantastic, and it's one of the things that makes the hobby such a good hobby to be in is having those local stores that are, like, as you say, you're making these mid-range events that are accessible to people.
Yeah, that's right, and then that's kind of how we gear our marketing as well. Because the first ITC event, it was kind of like an ITC practice event, or our ITC practice tournament is how we kind of sold it. So it was kind of to make it a soft landing for people, because there are a lot of people out there in the local community who have played in a couple of tournaments before, but they might not have been to an ITC before, which is quite serious.
Right.
It's the sort of
quite
event
big.
where
It's daunting.
you need to prepay. You need to submit your list a week in advance. You need to clear your rule set and your command points listings and all that sort of thing with the tournament organizer in advance.
Yeah.
And so our first couple of events were just walking people through that process to get them comfortable, because there's lots of people that love that competitive play. And Games Workshop were nice enough to actually sponsor the event. They gave us.
Oh wow!
They did.
Awesome.
They gave us something like $700 worth of prizes in retail.
Whoa,
so
that's crazy.
Yeah, so all the podium finishes walked away with a combat patrol. There were
awesome.
There were character prize giveaways throughout the day, and so Games Workshop have been incredible in supporting us in that regard. So it's more just a sort of grassroots approach from now. I mean, the sky's the limit, but we're really just interested in listening to what our local community wants, and just offering the casual play whenever they want it, and then more formal events for those people who like to come in and play 3 games back to back and really see how their list goes.
You've really reignited my excitement to, once this lockdown's over, actually come up and be involved a bit here and there.
Oh man, 100%. It's literally like a 50-minute flight for us.
It's not far
these
days,
and we just can't do it. It's very frustrating. I mean, there's, for the listeners out there, there's stuff between Dice Arcade and Risky Rollers in the works that's gonna be big. It's not happening now, but it's gonna be happening at some point.
Yeah, snowballs.
Yeah,
snowballs. It's rolling.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening. So yeah. I mean, and even like things like Infinity and Maelstrom's Edge and all these other bits and pieces.
That's another thing as well.
Right? Like, it's
just offer these new systems, and Star Wars Legion. Yeah, it's a big following. There's some great new releases coming out next month for Star Wars Legion. Yoda, Wookiee
Dalton,
Warriors.
We were talking about this last night, right?
I was salivating over the
Commandos.
Well, they haven't announced any Commandos yet, but I'm sure they're coming. But no, they've very soon they're releasing a bunch more stuff for droids. I've immediately forgotten what it's called. The droid tank.
The droid, the walkie thing, and then there's like a spider boss.
There's the dwarf spider droid and stuff that I'm like, I need them all. And then they've just announced all of the Scum and Villainy expansions with the Shadow Collective Mandalorians and Darth Maul.
That gets me excited.
The Pike Syndicate. I'm like, that's so cool.
Running your own crime syndicate as a faction, that is cool. That is real cool. That's right up my speed.
It's very Star Wars, and it's a really interesting thing. I'm really keen to see how that shakes out.
I think I love it so much because it's the non-Disney Star Wars, right? It's like the old,
Well, I mean, there's bits and pieces.
Clone Wars.
It's the real Star Wars, right? It's like the bottom barrel of Coruscant / kind of like a Hive City, but a Hive City's way worse. But you know,
Han shot first. Star Wars.
Yeah. No, even worse though. Like especially in the old Republic lore stuff.
Well, one of them is like Prince Sizor from the old. I've already forgotten what. I want to say it was was it Shadows of the Empire comic series back in the Dark Horse comics?
That's
yeah.
That's cool.
So yeah, there's a whole depth of lore and stuff that they're going into with that, and I'm really excited to see.
The simplest thing where the Hutts, as in like their main planet of Hutta, Null Hutta, where they went in and then like genocidally raped the entire population and filled it with toxic pollution and everything, and you know, where's that on?
No wonder Jabba was so angry.
Yeah, bro. But like Jabba wasn't even bad. Like seriously, he was one of the more tame ones compared to some of the crazy Hutts that existed well before he was alive. And you know, that's just that part of the Star Wars unit. Like, and this is what I like to think about Star Wars, is there is the quote unquote grim dark of Star Wars. There is a grim dark part of it. You've just got to look harder for it. But it's there, you know, it's 100% there, and it's really cool that they're actually kind of openly as a game system now they're exploring those kinds of things. Maybe not as, you know, direct in your faces as that, but it's still cool.
It's still there. So anyone that hasn't played it, it's a great game for fans and also for established wargamers that are after a new flavour.
It's a really interesting
they got this activation system. Like they got these ability cards that are all one-liners from the films.
Yeah,
so
I love.
So whether you're playing it for just so you can play the Hello There card on Obi-Wan, or whether you just want something that's like a little bit more balanced, there's this whole pre-game metagame. Like give it a go, and it's cheap too. $40K.
Compared to a 40K or Sigmar or Fantasy Army, it's very cheap.
I mean, Infinity is very similar too, right? I mean, Dalton and I have been going through the whole process of learning Infinity and prepping because we're going to be featuring Infinity on the channel, and you know, it's different. It's a nice.
That's almost the other direction of the spectrum. It's like it's a lot cheaper, obviously, and smaller models, but it's I'd almost say probably more complicated and more involved than 40K.
It's much more complicated.
Probably more so than Necromunda even, but that's part of its charm, because it's really involved and detailed rule set that it's quite immersive and it's very very interactive to play.
And I feel with Infinity, you know, every decision matters with Infinity. As you know, 40K you can make I mean, maybe not top tier 40K on a competitive level, but just in general, you can make a mistake with a unit or make a mistake in a turn. You know, you can have a blunder of a turn and kind of still be like, oh, I'm all right. But you know, with Infinity, if you whiff, that could be game. You know, like that could be three models dead, and you're that's the game over. You know, and I think
that's critical.
The risk reward aspect of that game is quite you know, enticing. It is for me anyway. I like that.
It's often been criticised for being too complex, but if anyone's kind of wondering what it feels like to play, it's kind of like the previous edition of Kill Team, but on crack. It's just taking it to the level. It's got activations, and probably the most interesting rule set is the what do you call it? The reaction rule.
The AROs, automatic reaction orders. Yeah.
It's quite unique. I feel like they haven't dialed down the user friendliness of it yet. But it's still very, very interesting. Interrupting or interacting in real time whilst something's happening is quite cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool mechanic.
So for those that are looking to get into it, there is what they call Code 1. For those of you kind of understanding how the products are kind of laid out, there is N4, which is the current edition, but there's also Code 1, which is kind of like the light version or the sort of beginner's version.
It's like an intro version. You can start with that, learn the main, because it's the same rules. It just doesn't have all of the extra layers on it.
I think the best way to describe it for 40K people is like Code 1 is the 8th edition changes of Simplicity to 7th to what N4 is. Like, you had this previous kind of super complicated system that just got stripped right down and simplified. That's what Code 1 is to the main version of Infinity.
Yeah, that's a great allegory.
Yeah,
Great comparison.
But I think we've got a bunch of minis on the way from you, Tim, for Infinity that I'm super keen to get stuck into painting.
Got a couple heading on. Yeah. But,
that's gonna be good.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll wrap up here, and I'll say massive thank you, Tim, for coming on the podcast. It's been great to have you, and we're keen to have you again sometime.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah, it's been great, guys. Thanks so much.
And before we head off, I just wanted to say, like, certainly from myself, and I imagine on behalf of a lot of the community that's involved and all sorts of aspects of the hobby, thank you for doing what you do and running the store and facilitating all of that. Because
it's absolutely really my pleasure. I think every hobby's out there at one stage is for at least 5 minutes has thought about owning their own store. So it really is. I love my job, and I'm forever fortunate that I've had so much support and such incredible success so soon. So yeah, guys. So if there's anyone out there who wants to get involved in Dice Arcade in whatever capacity that is, whether they want to run an event or they just want to see a new product on the shelves, or they just want to learn to play a certain game, by all means reach out. And big thanks as well to Risky Rollers. It's been an absolute privilege to see you guys put the store up in lights on every bat rep, and it gives me chills every time. Thanks so much.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you're more than welcome, bro. It's a great start to what's going to be a dominating partnership, man. We've got a lot of we've got a lot of things planned for all of you rabid, crazy hobbyists out there. It's gonna be a gnarly journey.
Yeah, sweet.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and as well to you, Locky, as always.
Thanks, mate.
So we'll thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
If that money doesn't show, then you owe me, my jungle love. Oh, I think I wanna know ya.
I'm so glad there's a recording running right now.
Were you there that whole time?
Yeah.